All right, I'm here with Dr. Chloe Weber. She is the founder of Radical Roots, and she is a mama on a mission to bring the safest and most effective hemp oil and Chinese herbs to the market. She also has this amazing, beautiful son, Remy, who helped her, I think, birth the first product, which we'll talk about, Remy's Revenge, which is a formula that she used to help her son who has this rare genetic disorder. And I can't wait to get into it with you. Welcome to the show, Chloe.
Thanks so much, Joel. It's an honor to be here.
You're one of my favorite people. I don't say that a lot, and I really mean it because there's some people that you get to meet at conferences and shows, and like you're the real deal. They talk about like vibration and energy, and we just clicked. You're on the same wavelength. I love it, and abundant mindset. You're very giving and with knowledge and just everything that you pour into. So I'm just blessed to have you on the show. I really, really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much, and same to you. It was so much fun when we first met at that strange conference a couple of years back.
Yes, it was a boutique conference. There was only like 10 of us, but it was a good time. I enjoyed it. Okay, I want to talk about. Obviously, we're gonna get into Radical Roots, your company, but before we go there, I mean, just talk about kind of what led you to Radical Roots, to birthing this company. I'm sure it wasn't maybe in your destiny, like, yeah, one day I'm gonna have a supplement company and it's gonna be around Chinese herbs and hemp. I mean, how did this even happen?
Oh, it's been a long and winding road, Joel. Let's see. Um, so I fell in love with Chinese medicine back in the day. I used acupuncture in order to quit smoking and to help me with allergies when I was younger. And then when I grew up, I wanted to do something in public health. I had had a rare tropical disease when I was 15 and was really fascinated with ecology and evolutionary biology and basically how we're impacting the environment is driving disease in different directions. Because I was one of the first people who had been diagnosed with this rare disease coming out of Costa Rica.
You said I'm sorry, you said it's a tropical disease.
Yeah, well, that's what I had. So when I was in high school, I went hiking in Costa Rica and I got cutaneous leishmaniasis, which is a parasitic disease that sort of infest your cells. They reproduce and reproduce until they lyse the cell and explode the cell and move on to other ones. And so this is a disease that's normally seen in the Middle East, but it was found in Costa Rica, and that was due to sort of environmental shifts that have been going on. So these bugs have been moving to other places. So I went down on like sort of like an outward bound type trip down to Costa Rica, came back, a 15-year-old girl in New York City with these oozing lesions on my arm and on my face. And finally, after multiple tests, I was on a first name basis with the CDC, and they were like, you have cutaneous leishmaniasis. So I went on a chemotherapy for that. I think now there's a topical. So that was really fun. It was honestly one of the best learning experiences of my life, as a 15-year-old in New York, getting such a rare and traumatic tropical disease. It made me really, really appreciate everything that I have and really look to find ways that we can help other people and look for, the foundational causes of health and the foundational causes of disease. So I've really been on a mission to sort of help with public health ever since then. And then once I sort of fell down the rabbit hole of Chinese medicine, it's been game over ever since. Chinese herbs are what I believe to be the most effective and the safest system of medicine that we have. It is, thousands of years and millions of doctors of work that is, incredibly powerful, incredibly strong. And I am just incredibly honored to stand on the shoulders of all of these other doctors. But so with Chinese medicine, what we do is we really look at the underlying patterns of disharmony within the body and then use herbal medicine that sort of helps address not only the symptoms that are presenting, but the underlying causes. So it's sort of the root and the branch as we look at it in Chinese medicine. But so I had just graduated from Chinese medical school and started a nonprofit Chinese herb clinic called Urban Herbs when I was pregnant with my son, Remy. And then once he was diagnosed with his rare genetic disorder, STXBP1, then I sort of started going down the rabbit hole of hemp medicine, cannabis medicine, and trying to control his seizures. And he has a movement disorder that causes Parkinsonian-like tremors, as well as a whole slew of other disabilities. He's nonverbal, cognitively disabled, ataxia, apraxia. He's walking now, but he's 8.5, and he didn't walk till he was about 6. And we worked very, very, very hard for that. And now it's a bit of a curse in some ways as well, because he's a Tasmanian devil.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I went down the rabbit hole with hemp and then just saw that everything was this one size fits all model. And sort of like the stubborn mama I am, I decided to combine Chinese herbal medicine with hemp medicine and create formulas that I felt were more effective than what was on the market.
Going back to the disease of your body, knowing what you know now, because I don't believe there is a disease. I just think that's a Western model approach of, I can't figure this out, so I'm just going to give it a name, and it is what it is. And they gave you chemo. Clearly, you have no lesions on your body right now. You look amazing. You look in vital health. But knowing what you know now, like you said, parasitic infection, to me, there's some underlying root cause of something. Let's just give the body the right input and have the body heal on its own. Do you think that is possible, knowing what you know now, if you had to go back in time for that 15-year-old self? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I always go back and forth in terms of the germ theory versus terrain theory. In Chinese medicine, we're really ultimately working on the terrain. That's what we're talking about when we're trying to balance out the body and create a better terrain so that whatever's going on is going to be cleared out. So certainly I was more susceptible to these pathogens. And I do think that there are a lot of ways that this could have been treated that were not a chemotherapy made of antimony, which then potentially may have played an impact on my son. So I certainly would have preferred that we knew about ozone at that time, or that my parents had any concept of what they were doing with me, which is fair. They're book publishers, they're book nerds. They have no idea of biohacking or alternative medicine. But, and
it's censored here in the West. So we know, like, if you go to Germany, the ozone therapy is more common, but like here it's not, but yeah.
Exactly. And I'm personally obsessed with ozone. I think every family should have an ozone machine in their house. But yeah, I know people who have treated cutaneous leishmaniasis with acupuncture and Chinese herbal medicine, which means that through affecting the terrain and through using our more holistic approaches, we are able to treat this disorder. But instead, I had a chemo made of antimony.
Yeah.
So that's cool. Great.
What do you think people are getting wrong when it comes to Chinese medicine or herbs? I'm a big fan of acupuncture and Chinese medicine. I gotta be honest, I don't use it a lot. And in my own, and I'm talking about just within my own home, and like I have lots of potions and concoctions and herbals and stuff, but I don't use a ton of it. And I think for me, and I'll tell you why. The only reason is I don't have a clear understanding as a holistic health coach of how to implement it in my protocols. Like I just don't know. And because of that, like I know, like for someone like me, I'm a high charger. I'm a guy who I know, like I could supplement with ashwagandha every day because I think I need it. But other than that, like just giving you that example, I don't really know how to use it in my protocol. So I just don't use it that much. But I will use it for women with like estrogen dominance, like we're just talking about, like ashwagandha or something like that, or even for males, right? That's sometimes when I'll use it. But in general, I don't use it like on a day to day. So I'm just curious. That's probably two questions, but just in your opinion, what do you think people are getting wrong when it comes to Chinese medicine, or what's one of some of the biggest misconceptions?
Well, some of the things that are fun. So since I own an herb company that combines hemp with Chinese herbs, it's always fascinating to see what people are more concerned about. Some people are really concerned about Chinese herbs and the quality of the herbs, which is a very valid concern. All of our herbs are tested. Every single herb that goes into any of my products is tested for heavy metals, pesticides, molds, et cetera, et cetera.
Most companies, Chloe, don't do that. I mean, is that pretty rampant? Yeah.
It is pretty rampant because you can't. So with Chinese herbs, we use about 400 herbs typically. And then from those 400 herbs, we have about 150 classical Chinese herbal formulas that then ideally we will modify specifically to you and what's going on in your present health situation, your personal body, how your body's functioning. So that's the gold standard in Chinese medicine. You get a practitioner who's going to work one-on-one with you and customize a formula for you. But what we do is we use multiple herbs together so that it makes it really safe and dynamic. So we're addressing a multifaceted approach of what's going on within your body.
I love that, by the way, because my naturopath mentor kind of said something similar. He's like, look at, candida overgrowth. Let's just use that as an
Mm-hmm.
example. He's like, I could give you oregano oil, and for a lot of people it works, but not everybody. He's like, I've always seen like a symphony of ingredients. So oregano, black walnut, like the symphony of herbs seems to do much better. So I think kind of what you're saying too is like, it's this combination, this synergistic effect, right, with the herbs and the combinations.
Absolutely. I mean, it's beautiful the way that the herbs work together, but they also make it more safe and effective. So, like,
Mm.
say, in terms of bioavailability, like Chinese medicine, as we're writing a formula, if I'm writing a formula that's a tonic formula, so a formula that's going to help boost your energy, maybe sort of adaptogenic stuff, anti-aging stuff, that's a tonic formula. That's what most of our formulas with Radical Roots are. What we're also going to do is we're going to add in some herbs that are going to help support digestive function so that you're able to break down those herbs. So you're able to use them. It might support, some herbs that might support liver function so that it's supporting your liver as you're breaking down these things. So it's really, really safe and effective. And it blows me away to see how these practitioners were able to figure out all of these things thousands of years ago that Western medicine is just catching up with now. So it's really just mind blowing, really, when you dive down it. But it's almost impossible for a layperson to get into Chinese herbs and just use them. I mean, there are plenty of practitioners of Chinese medicine who only do acupuncture because they were too daunted by learning Chinese herbal medicine. I almost failed my first herbs midterm, which is what made my stubborn ass decide to go fucking all in on Chinese herbs. Because I was like, oh no, this is not happening. And I'm totally in love with it. I mean, herbs are really, a lot of it stems from nutrition and Chinese nutritional therapy. So that's where I would start if I was a layperson or somebody who's like a health coach or working on their health. There's Healing with Whole Foods, I think. I forget the author, but it's, you can look into Chinese nutritional therapy. It really goes by, eating seasonally, eating for your body type, eating to support your own constitution. Some people do really great with salads and whatnot if you have a hotter constitution. However, if you're sort of a cold or deficient person as your body type, you're going to want to eat more soups and warm foods, ginger, so like ginger, cardamom, licorice, cinnamon, all these medicinal mushrooms, Chinese yams, goji berries. These are all Chinese herbs that are also foods. So that's sort of how I fell in love with Chinese herbs also, because I'm quite a foodie. But so to answer your question, part of why I started Radical Roots was to give people a taste of the power of Chinese medicine in a way that they can sort of take it off of a shelf that's safe enough for them to use, even if they're not exactly getting the specific formula that's created directly for them.
Yeah, and I think that's really nice too, because like you said, not a lot of people understand the herbs, including myself, and I'm pretty knowledgeable in health. I don't understand some of the power that is possible. So I think that's you're making it a really tasty way for us to kind of like slowly be introduced, where people, especially when you just don't know that much about it.
Exactly. I mean, seriously, there are acupuncturists and herbalists who are still having a hard time with Chinese herbs. It is a very complicated system. I remember one of my teachers saying, basically, so Chinese medicine school, when you're getting your master's in Chinese medicine, it's a 3-year program at a minimum, but it's 8 classes per semester, 3 semesters a year. So that's the course equivalent of 2.5 law degrees or 3.5 master's degrees in 3 years. And that's just to get your master's in Chinese medicine. I have a doctorate, which is a further degree in studying. But so it's an incredibly extensive program, and it's really, really challenging. We do a lot of Western medicine in there as well. So it's important for people to understand how much we study. But I remember my teacher saying, basically you study for the first year and you just memorize everything. And then one day it's going to click into place and you're going to understand how Chinese medicine works. So it's so much more beyond a medicine. It's also really a philosophy and a way of life. It's a way of looking at everything. It's the yin and the yang of everything. You look and you can see the dynamic interplay of everything in the world once you really understand Chinese medicine. So one way that people can start playing with that a little bit is, I always recommend reading the Tao. It is the book that most resonates with me in terms of life philosophy. It's really impressively profound and really heartening, especially in these somewhat wild times that we find ourselves in. The Tao. And then also people can check out like a 5 element chart. So I'll send you one that you can post.
Okay.
But basically each organ is associated with a different color, a different element, a different sound, a different taste, a different emotion. So these things allow you to sort of start to get an idea of how you're feeling. So maybe you're feeling a lot of grief and you feel that in your chest, like that the grief is the emotion of the lungs, or anger is the emotion of the liver. So you can sort of start correlating these things and start being able to look at what your body is telling you and look at it through the lens of Chinese medicine and see what you might be able to learn about yourself, because it really is pretty fun to start to play with.
Yeah, so cool. And you're so right. They were way ahead of their times. And I think even we're just catching up to, I just had Dr. Bradley Nelson on the show just the other day talking about the emotion code, the body code, and a lot of similarities to it. He said, hey, I'm on the shoulder of giants. Like, I took things from Eastern medicine, and we were talking about how organ health might tie into things like pain, for example. Like if you have, I think it was kidney pain, or your kidneys or adrenals are shot, you might have left knee pain. And we're just like, oh man, my knees are bothering me. It must be a physical issue. If you have right knee pain, it could be something going on with your gallbladder. And again, we just don't understand that the Chinese knew that a long time ago. They understood this connection with organs and muscles and ligaments. So it's just fascinating.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And in Chinese medicine, a lot of times people get very concerned about us talking about the organs. What we're generally referring to is like the energetic actions of the organs. So like liver qi stagnation is the most common diagnosis you're going to get in Chinese medicine. We call them underlying patterns of disease. What?
And is that because the liver, I heard that it's symbolic for the emotion anger.
Yeah, exactly. And frustration. So liver qi stagnation is, basically the liver is in charge of the free flow of qi and blood throughout the body. So qi is sort of the energy of the body. Blood is the blood of the body. So you want to have the free flow of energy throughout the body. Otherwise, you're going to have disharmony in one way or another. A lot of times, if there's pain, then we'll say that there's stagnation in that area. We normally in Chinese medicine actually want to heat that area as opposed to ice that area. But it depends on what's going on. But that sort of allows the free flow of qi and blood in that area. But so the liver, when you get stressed, the liver constrains and you're not allowed, the free flow of qi and blood doesn't move throughout your body the way that it normally does. But what we're talking about is really the energetic actions of that organ. So a lot of times people will be like, what's wrong with my liver? And you're like, no, it's not. This doesn't mean that like you're toxic, that you have a toxic overload. It just means that you're stressed and the flow of qi and blood is not working the way that you want throughout your body. With liver qi stagnation, you'll typically see like, you can think of it as classic PMS symptoms. So like for females, you're going to see irritability, PMS. You're going to see cramps before your period. For men, you can think of sort of that classically like red-faced, angry dude. So that qi sort of stagnates in the liver, and then that causes heat to rise and harass the heart and like harass the head, and you get irritable. So it's always just an important differentiation, because a lot of times people will come to practitioners and get freaked out that we're talking about these different diagnoses. But a lot of times it's more correlated to your emotions than it is actual physiological actions of the organs.
Yeah, so amazing. So talk to me about the combination of hemp and why you include that in a lot of your formulas.
Well, hemp is just such a fascinating herb, and it's been used classically in Chinese medicine as well for thousands of years. I started studying it for my son Remy because, when your kid has a genetic disorder that's named after the gene that's mutated, basically Western medicine has jack shit for you. And again, as an herbalist and somebody who has studied alternative medicine for so long, I was like, well, there's got to be something we can work on with him. The idea of giving him farms that are going to dull his neuroconnectivity in order to reduce his seizures didn't make a lot of sense to me when I have a child who didn't crawl till he was 2.5, didn't walk till he was 6.5, and is at 8.5, maybe cognitively around 2 or 3. So I started researching hemp and just was blown away by how incredibly versatile and effective it is. I mean, the endocannabinoid system really affects every aspect of our functioning. as well as our brains, and regulating our neurotransmitters, regulating inflammation throughout the body, regulating. I'm always amazed at how much it actually regulates our gut and our immune system. And that's something that I think is very underexplained and under-discussed in our community. So I fell in love with the plant. I'm also from Brooklyn and live in Boulder, so I have ample experience in cannabis. But I just find that it's a herb that helps calm our nervous system, helps regulate our endocannabinoid system. And what it seems to me that it does when it's in conjunction with the Chinese herbs is it sort of puts your body in a state in which it's able to accept the herbs more readily. So that's just something that I would say anecdotally, but like, I think that when you're in fight or flight, you're going to have a hard time absorbing just about anything. And hemp seems to have that ability to sort of regulate the nervous system and allow you to receive the care and the love from the plants that you're getting from the herbs. So I found them to be incredibly synergistic and really, really effective together.
Yeah, very cool. And then with hemp, how do you, I know with hemp specifically, people will say, oh, well, I tried this brand and it didn't work. And I tried this brand and it didn't work. And I've heard, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I've heard there's certain spectrum. There's obviously so many spectrums, and you need to find the one that obviously, works with your body. Is there a way that you've kind of found like, this is kind of a hemp that we use because it seems to work for most everybody? Or I don't know. I mean, how did you think about that?
So we played a lot with different strains in the beginning. We've settled on a couple, and mainly what my focus is on is using really environmentally conscious growing techniques. So we have a farmer that uses no-till farming techniques, and is really respectful to the environment. Hemp actually pulls up toxins from the ground and potentiates topsoil. So when you're growing it in an eco-friendly way, then it's actually helping restore the environment as well as helping restore your body. But also you want to make sure that you're getting a really high quality hemp product, because otherwise it is going to pull up all those toxins from the environment. And there's a lot of really, really bad products on the market, to be honest. What I find interesting about hemp is that CBD, what it does is our endocannabinoid system is a master regulatory system. We make our own cannabinoids. They're called endocannabinoids. The two main ones are 2-AG and anandamide, right? So these endocannabinoids that we make are the ones that are regulating our system day to day. But what happens is that they get broken down after they're used. So when we're in chronic stress due to the world or pain or whatever we have going on in our lives, these endocannabinoids are used, and then they're broken down by these different enzymes. So what CBD actually does is it blocks these enzymes from breaking down our own endogenous cannabinoids, so we're able to reuse them. So what I think is most important is that, you're getting a high quality product. I don't think it's as important the strain specifics as I used to think it is, because it's really more about making sure that our endogenous cannabinoids are readily available to be reused. When you're looking at strains, you can also look at the terpene profiles, which are the volatile oils, which are essentially the essential oils of the plant, which give hemp and cannabis that very pungent and distinctive smell and have a lot of medicinal qualities as well.
Yeah, very cool. And then, do you need anything? And I have no idea. Have you seen anything in terms of the absorbability of hemp or even the herbs with, I don't know, MCT, or is there any way to like better increase that bioavailability, or if it going through the digestion tract, do you still see some pretty good effects?
It's interesting. So with Radical, we do a unique spagyric extraction. So I have this crazy brilliant manufacturer up in the mountains in Colorado. He does spagyric extraction. So it's this alchemical extraction where you tincture all the herbs, and then that tincture is considered the spirit of the body. And then he takes the herbs and he burns them for like 8 to 10 hours. And then from the ashes, he reconstitutes all the salts and minerals, and so that's considered the body, puts that into the tincture. It creates this crazy chemical reaction, and it's esoterically combining the body and the spirit back together of the plant. But in reality, it creates this chemical reaction that makes them very, very bioavailable. And it's something that you can easily taste if you are somebody who does herbs and knows these plants well. So we have them in tinctures and then we have them in capsules. So the tinctures are interesting because they're in organic MCT oil and you absorb them under the tongue. So those are what I typically recommend for people who are looking for a faster acting product. If you're in significant pain, if you're waking up at like between 1 and 3 in the morning and you want to get back to sleep, that's typically liver time also, people. So make sure that you're managing that stress. Liver also, since it's the stagnation, try and get some extra exercise, qigong or meditation in there. But so the oils are faster acting. And then, so if you have digestive disharmony, you're also bypassing having to go through the gut in order to get that in your system. So depending on people's level of health and their GI health, I recommend the oils as a great starting place. Our capsules have the water solubles as well as the oil solubles. So to me, Chinese herbs are traditionally decocted into water. So I like having the water solubles of that in there. Also, there have been other companies, not my company, because we don't have the funding to do this, who have done research on the water soluble aspects of hemp that have shown that that makes it significantly more bioavailable. So as far as I know, we are the only company that has the water solubles and the oil solubles and all of the salts and minerals in those capsules. So those I find to be the strongest that we have. But again, as you said, it depends on somebody's ability to digest them in the GI and break them down. They're all in enteric-coated vegan capsules. So they do get to the gut, which is really important, especially if you're looking for some of the gut-specific and immune-specific responses that you're getting from hemp.
Yeah. Amazing. All right. I want to go back a little bit and talk about my guy, Remy. Okay.
Yes.
Because there's just so much to unpack. And I feel like, like you said, what a blessing. I think our kids are a reflection of us, or they give us answers maybe that we weren't thinking or seeking, and force us to go deeper to areas we never thought we would go. And so I'm just curious for you, like, what have you learned, we'll talk about some of the, I know you and I both want to talk about how we can create this optimal environment with children with quote unquote disabilities. But I'm also curious, like, what is like some of the biggest lessons that he's taught you, and like, what have you learned just from this guy?
Yes, Remy is the greatest teacher I never asked for. I always knew I was going to be a mom. I was always very excited about that. I had no idea that this journey would be the way that it is. And like many parents of children with special needs, I didn't know about the world of disability until I was brought into it. And it's pretty alarming how challenging it is truly to be a caregiver and to navigate this space. I've been, I don't know the stats, but the rates of divorce in families with children with special needs is, I think, twice that of typical families, which is already at like 50%. So that's got to be a little bit off, but it is, I've been a single mom with Rem since he was 1, and we have been through a whole lot. Some of the best lessons, people are always amazed at how much I do since I'm a single mom, and I finished my doctorate and I have 2 to 3 businesses and, 3 aging pets.
You finished your doctorate when Remy was born?
I finished my doctorate. So I had already had my master's. I finished my doctorate during the pandemic, actually. I was like, well, let's just throw this on here. What is this? Sorry about that. The way I look at life in so many ways now is, Remy shows up 1,000%. I'm so fortunate. I have the happiest kid in the world. Like, he can't even really feed himself. He's in diapers at 8.5. He can't speak. And he's literally the happiest human in the world. He watches the leaves blow in the wind and he gets so fucking hyped. Like, everything, like bubbles. He's recently obsessed with the Family Feud, which is the funniest thing I've ever seen. I don't know if it's Steve Harvey or if it's all the clapping. But he just shows me day in and day out to not take anything for granted, and to show up and to look at the little things and to appreciate all of the little things. He's such a great teacher, and it's been a wonderful journey, and it's challenged me in every single possible way. But he really is just so inspirational. So whenever I, want to take a day where I want to rest, or whenever there's something that I sort of want to bow out of because it's an uncomfortable space for me or a challenge, I just look at him and I'm like, all right, like if you're going to show up and give 100% every day, despite every challenge that you face. And I'm telling you, like, this kid is disabled in every way you could be disabled. And he's, that being said, we are incredibly fortunate about a lot of, his health is very good. He is able to do so many things, and he is not in chronic pain, which many children with disabilities are. He's not having daily seizures, which many children with his disorder are. There's so many things that I'm incredibly grateful for.
What's his disability? What's it called?
So his genetic disorder is called STXBP1. So basically it's it's a gene for a protein that's made that helps the neurons communicate. So it helps the neurons uptake different vesicles. So everything, if you see him, he's very handsome. He looks very neurotypical and very perfect. But every aspect of his body and brain is affected, because if your brain's not able to send and receive those chemicals correctly, then no part of your body works. So it's a multifaceted disorder. So there's not one, like you could say he's disabled because he's not technically, like he's walking, but he is in an adaptive stroller a lot of the time, because he will walk when and where he wants to walk and for how long he can walk. He's nonverbal. Intractable epilepsy, though, is by far the worst thing I've ever experienced. So, I always like to remind people that epilepsy is so poorly understood by the Western medical system that they still perform actual lobotomies on children if they can't get the seizures controlled by a cocktail of medications. And these medications are very, very, very strong. So, there are parents who are actually choosing to have parts of their kids' brains cut out or cut apart in order to stop these seizures. So as a parent, you've got to know how desperate these parents have got to be to choose that as an option. So just to put it into context of like how horrific epilepsy actually can be. But yeah, so it's very challenging, but as I said, Remy just shows up. And so it challenges me to show up and at least equal him, if not Mama Bear, try and show up even more than he does.
Yeah. You have to, you have to show up as a 12 so that he can come and show up as a 10, wow. Okay. And this genetic disorder, like, is there anything, have you seen any, like, I'm a very glass half full person. So like, I'm curious, like, is there a community of people that you're seeing with this same disorder that we're seeing good results or positive things moving in that direction? Or, I'm kind of the guy that like one day we'll crack this. Like, I don't know what it'll be, but do you have the same kind of vibe, or what do you think?
I've taken Remy all over the world. I've taken him to all the doctors. We used to go to Ecuador for a month twice a year, where we do ozone and hyperbaric and alpha brainwave stim and all sorts of stuff. So we've done a lot. There's a lot of research in genetic modification that's going on that shows a lot of promise. There are a couple of meds that are showing some promise in terms of reusing that STXBP1 protein. I don't know, honestly. And there is a great community. My special needs mamas and dads, they're all my heroes. If you have a friend or family member who has a child with special needs, bring them a coffee, maybe some gluten-free cake, or just like high quality chocolate, But they are genuinely my heroes. So many of these parents are out there not only taking care of their children, but, raising funds for research and just doing incredible world-changing things. I don't know that a genetic modification will actually be the answer, but it's sort of funny because the first part of our journey, I spent so much time trying to figure out how to support Remy and how I could offer him all of these opportunities for healing. And I was like, we can do this. We're going to figure this out, and inch by inch, we'll get there.
Yep.
And now I'm just sort of at a space where I'm like, Remy's exactly who Remy's supposed to be. And I'm going to continue to offer him opportunities for healing. But like, he's living his best life. Like if you got to bring the family down here at some point, or we'll come up and visit you guys. But like, he's so stoked. Like it would be hard to imagine him any other way. So it's sort of at this point, I always joke that it started out as an intellectual journey and clearly turned into more of a spiritual one for me. Yeah. But I just sort of love exactly who he is. And, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to give up hope that he will make progress and that I won't stop offering him healing options and continue to follow and support the research that's going on. But I also, he's such a light that it doesn't even matter to me anymore.
Yeah, you've gotten to the point where there was this. It was very probably a lot, and I know I'm the same way. Like very effort driven, like we're gonna get this, and then it's just like, no, you're just surrendering into what is. It just is. This is it is, and this is right now in life. This is perfect the way it is, and if things change, when you accept, like that idea of accepting and surrendering, I think there's just so much more power and so much more growth will come from that. So that's the neat thing. Wow. What would you say too? We were talking about this, that there's such a big misconception with parents, and as a dad, I'm the same way. When kids, or maybe mostly kids, are interacting with other, again, quotation marks, disabled kids in public. What do you see? And we were talking about this, like a lot of like kids and parents, they're just getting it wrong. They're like hushing their kids, like don't go over there and don't talk to that kid, or don't look at that kid, or don't point to him, he's disabled, like that's not okay. Like what do you want to like tell parents, like actually this is probably the better way to handle that?
Yeah, it is really challenging. And I totally get where parents and kids are coming from. Obviously kids are going to be curious. They're going to point, they're going to stare, they're going to ask questions. And I understand that parents' instinct is to try and protect us and not put us in an uncomfortable position. One thing I like to remind people is that, one, nobody knows our children are disabled more than we do. And two, we are just as proud, or potentially more proud, of our children than you are of your neurotypical children. I could not be more proud of Remy. I love telling his story. I love helping educate people on disabilities. And I love talking to other kiddos. It is hard for me as a solo mom of a child with special needs. I don't know what your kid understands a lot of the time. So what I like to encourage is, instead of pulling your kids away and trying to avoid that uncomfortable condition, lean into it a little bit and just come over, bring your kid over. Like, my son's an adaptive stroller. So you come over and be like, sweet wheels, I love those. Like, how's your day going? Or like, oh, I love your jacket. Like, it literally doesn't matter whatsoever. Just say something and start opening up the conversation. And, as long as the parent that you're talking to is open to it, you're going to be able to see that, and you're going to be able to lean into that and start asking questions and help facilitate that conversation with your kid. So you're teaching your kid that, like, to lead with curiosity and kindness, as opposed to shying away. Because let me tell you, like, when it comes to special needs parenting, we're all so isolated as it is. It's really, really hard a lot of times to bring our kids, Remy's never been asked to a play date. Remy's never been invited to a birthday party. He's 8.5. I live in Boulder, the most inclusive woke town in the world. Nobody invites this kid anywhere. He doesn't have after school activities. He's in an like all of these things. So we're already super isolated as a community. So then when we bring our kids out to the playground, and it's some days like tremendously heartbreaking for, like I can tell you for me, especially when Rem was really young, it was so hard bringing him to the playground and, helping to facilitate every move that he's doing and carrying him places. And you're watching all these little teeny tiny babies walk around, and you're doing hundreds and thousands of hours of therapy with these kids. So it's already really hard to muster up the strength sometimes to bring your disabled child to the playground, and then to have everybody shy away from you. it's really, really heartbreaking. So just come over and talk to us. Like, we'll just be so happy to talk to you. Like,
Yeah.
One thing just to remind people, like, I'm always happy to share Remy's diagnosis. Just be cautious that, like, some people, you're not, you don't, some people are less open about sharing their children's diagnosis, and there's really no need for them to have to share their kids' medical history with you, but they can talk to you about some of their challenges and strengths. And, a lot of times kids have a lot of the same things. So a lot of times with Remy, I'll be like, Remy doesn't talk with his mouth, but look, he's got an iPad and he talks with this. Isn't that cool? And they're like, wow. Or like, Remy loves water and bubbles just like you. So if you just focus on the commonalities that kids have overall, it normally goes pretty well. Kids are really, really responsive to it.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. Wow. I don't know where to go from there. That's a tough follow. I did want to ask you though, just about some exciting projects and some things that you're working on. And I know one of them is the Radical Roots membership that you're in the process of formulating, I believe, right? Hidden Roots. And I think I kind of addressed that early on in the podcast, talking about this idea of like coaches like myself, not really understanding how to have the herbs play into my own practice. Is that kind of what the goal of this is, or is it for everybody?
So with Radical Roots, I'm hoping to start expanding our reach into more health coaches so that I can get them to understand more of the nuance between our formulas and how to use them with their patients and clients. The other business that I started is Hidden Roots Society. So that's a private membership association that I'm hoping to build out an educational platform on. But it's something that can't be censored, and that allows me and other practitioners to see patients across the state lines. So I'm only technically licensed in New York and Colorado, but this would allow me to see patients for herbs all around the country. So the goal with that is to really scale custom Chinese herbal medicine as a proactive medical model instead of the reactive medical model that we have right now with Western medicine. So with that, currently I'm starting to take some patients, and hopefully the goal is to scale that so I can help other practitioners get more patients and get this medicine out to more people than I'm able to see personally. But I always joke that when you're an acupuncturist, there's not really like a career path, right? Like you get into school for Chinese medicine, and the last thing anybody's thinking about is being an entrepreneur, making a lot of money. You're getting into Chinese medicine because you want to help people and you see it as a potential vehicle for health for many people. But when you get out of school, unfortunately, unless you are a good business person, you are not able to see patients successfully. So there are a lot of really brilliant practitioners in my field who unfortunately are less successful than they should be. So this is a way that I'm hoping I can help them find some side work and help other people get customized medicine that's really going to help them build health as opposed to responding to disease.
Yeah, that's so neat. I love that. I think it's gonna flourish. So I can't wait for that. When do we expect that to be launched? It's a heavy lift.
It is a heavy lift. So I'm starting to take patients now. I'm also working on launching my own podcast, which hopefully you'll join me on.
Talk about that, Chloe, too. After you talk about this, talk about the podcast and who you're really, going to be really focused on, and some of the things that people can expect and tune into.
So with Hidden Roots, I'm starting to take some patients. So I'm starting to just sort of build that out. I just miss seeing patients, and I think that it feeds my soul to do custom herbs. I love the business side of things. I've loved running Radical Roots. But my goal is to hopefully step away from some of the day-to-day of Radical so that I can do the things that I enjoy the most, which are, seeing patients, doing custom herbal formulas, and educating and empowering people about, as we've been talking about, proactive health. So that's what I'm doing with the podcast. So really, I'm mainly focused on moms. I had a lot of resistance on having a mom podcast because as a special needs mom, that becomes your entire identity real quick. And I'm like, I have other things. But moms are ultimately the ones who buy the food, who pick the doctors, who make a lot of the decisions in the household. And also I see that moms are struggling tremendously. dads are in many ways also. And I don't want to belittle that, because I know that men do not have it easy in this society either. There's a lot of expectations on both genders that are just fascinating these days. But so my goal is to really help empower parents overall, but moms in general, about, how to take control of their health, looking at the environmental toxins and how those are playing into chronic health disorders in our children. I think the last research study I read said that 54% of children have a chronic health disorder. I am sure that those rates are dramatically rising. Stephanie Seneff, estimates that 1 out of 2 children will have autism in the next 10 to 15 years based on her research on glyphosate. It's really dramatic. It's really alarming. And as a caregiver, I can tell you that this is not a sustainable path for us to be on. So, I'm just hoping to give people tangible ways that they can make incremental shifts in their day-to-day life and their health, so that they can move imperfectly in a direction of health, as opposed to sliding in towards disease.
Yeah. So good. Yeah. I mean, you're right. I mean, you can't help everybody, but moms are just such a great niche of people to help, because they do make a lot of the 99% of the health decisions in the home are made by the moms. And so if you can create that ripple effect, then that affects the whole family. And eventually the stubborn dads like myself will come along. So I love it. I think that's going to be great. What's the name of the podcast, by the way?
I think it's going to be Radical Mom. Okay. I've been going back and forth on a bunch of stuff. I have a website, Remy's Revenge. But yeah, I think it'll be the Radical Mom podcast. I really wanted to do radicalmom.com because I found it highly entertaining, but it was already taken.
Of course,
so
yeah.
I'm trying to deal with that. But yeah, it should be launched in the next month or two. It's been really, really fun. I mean, as you know, having a podcast is great. It's sort of like a dream job. You get to nerd out on, topics that you find fascinating, and then get to actually interview the people who are making the products, doing the research, doing the thing, and, moving the world forward. So it's a tremendous honor. Doing everything that I do is a tremendous honor. Truly, I mean, being Remy's mom, being a practitioner of Chinese medicine, anybody who comes to me, for health and wellness, it really all is a tremendous honor that I take incredibly seriously.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to jump into some kind of final questions, but before I do, just anything I didn't ask you that you wish I had? You could always
Not
come
that
back.
I can think of. I've been rambling quite a lot.
I'm sure I have to have you on for a round two. So this is just, I feel like this was just kind of the overview of herbs and stuff. I definitely want to kind of geek out, I think, and go deeper. So we'll probably have you back for a round two. We can do that.
Yeah.
All right. I wanted to ask you, some of my final questions that I ask all my guests is, what are some choices that you think you made that made you who you are today?
Interesting. So when I was in high school and had leishmaniasis, that was when I found Taoism, which is interesting. But B, I actually started a quote book back then. And it's something that I was pretty obsessed with throughout my life. And recently I've become slightly obsessed with Bob Proctor and all things personal development via that lens. And so I do think that a lot of that positivity and those quotations were able to sort of sink into my subconscious and remind me to keep going when things get tough. And I think that that's been really helpful in terms of just, I've been through a lot. We've talked about some of it. I've been through a lot of other things as well that have been incredibly challenging personally. And, to remember always that, you might fall down, you might have a bad day. Their kids with Remy's disorder pass away fairly frequently, or much more frequently than I would like. Some days I'll hear about it and I'll be okay. And I'll be like, that's not Remy's path. Other days I'll hear about it and I will literally be on my floor hysterically crying from the moment he gets on the bus till the moment that bus drops him back off. And it's just that reminder that you're going to fall down. But I always know that at the end of the day, I'm going to get my ass back up and I'm going to lift up my chin. I'm going to get my kid and I'm going to give it everything I fucking got. So I think that working on that subconscious and making sure that you have those positive reinforcements, whether it's from somebody in your life or whether it's from, listening to podcasts or from rereading quotes or whatever it is, I think that that's really helpful. But then also just know that you're much more powerful than you think, and that giving yourself the grace to fall apart with the knowledge that you'll get back up can be really, really helpful.
Yeah. Wow. So good. You are such a force in the health and wellness world. I'm just curious, like, who's someone that inspires you, or who's someone's work that you're following right now? There's so many.
So many people. As I mentioned, Stephanie Seneff is just such a hero of mine. She is beyond brilliant. Her work is absolutely terrifying. So it's always trying to find that balance. I've been blown away with the opportunity to meet so many incredible practitioners. I'm a huge fan of the brain tap. I use that every day. Trying to think of other good ones.
Those are perfect. I had a
Yeah.
feeling you're going to say Stephanie Seneff, so I was just excited to see if that was going to be the person. And then you mentioned Bob Proctor. I mean, there's just so many. So yeah, but yeah, that's great.
I asked AI if Bob Proctor was my spirit guide, and it said no. I feel like that's some bullshit, though.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to talk to ChatGPT about this later.
You mentioned a couple books already, but any books that you would recommend? I'm a big reader. Like, is there a top 1 to 3 that you'd say you got to go out and read these because these changed my life?
Definitely the Tao. Definitely the Tao. Toxic Legacy by Stephanie Seneff. In terms of just general health, I would almost even go back to like Omnivore's Dilemma, and just going into sort of how our farm, like there's such an interplay between our diet and the farming techniques that we're using and the toxins that are going into the food. It's astounding how much of a difference there is between conventionally raised meat and, organically farm raised grazed meat is. So, just sort of starting to get that basic understanding of where our food's coming from, how it's being grown, and how essential that is, and the interconnection between how we're treating the environment and how that's going to affect the environment within our bodies. If we're killing off all the microbes and the pathogens in the plants, then we're also killing that off in our own body, and our bodies are 10 to 1 or something like that. Yeah. Microbes, yep. Bacteria to humans. So fairly important.
Yeah, I'd say so. Last 2 questions, we'll wrap it up. Any rituals or hacks or practices that you like to do on a regular basis?
I'm all about the little things. I think in biohacking we get there's like a very perfectionist, overachieving mindset of like, let's do all of the things. And as a single mom of a child with special needs, that is not an option in my life. So I am really about practical things. So brain tap or some sort of meditation every day. And then really movement is the other thing that I think is the most important to me. As often as possible, I'm outside hiking or doing something outside. If not that, then I'm a big fan of, I have Fight Camp, which I'm slightly obsessed with and highly recommend. It's like a kickboxing app with like a heavy bag in my living room. And then, or swimming or, just moving as much as possible and meditating as much as possible, but also just eating whole foods. Those are the 3 things that I think are just non-negotiables for me.
Yeah, love that. All right. Last but not least, Chloe Weber, tell us where we can find you, connect with you more, and just learn more about Radical Roots and everything that you're up to.
Let's see. So we've got Instagram is Radical Roots Herbs. I'm not great at that, but we're working on doing better. I'm starting to TikTok a little bit at Remy's Revenge 2. And yeah, if you sign up at Radical Roots Herbs for our newsletter, you'll get more information about the podcast. You can also go to hiddenrootsociety.com, and that's where you can sign up for the membership and see me as a practitioner. The credit card processing thing, much like with CBD, has been a pain in the neck since it's a private membership association. So just shoot me an email and then we'll get you set up that way. I'm only taking a handful of patients at a time. But I would love to be in contact with you, and I will be putting as much content out as possible to help empower other people to be their own practitioners, because ultimately the more you can check in with your health, the better. I always tell my patients, I'm like, I don't want to see you. Like, I love you. I want to check in with you. I want you taking your herbs day to day, but I don't want to see, like I want you out there healthy, living your life. And then you come in for a checkup, check in with yourself. But the more that we can empower you to take care of your health, the better.
Yeah, so good. Amazing. Thank you so much for being on the show. Oh, last thing, I think we're going to give the viewers a coupon code. So, for Radical Roots. So let's go with, how about Joel Evan? If you type in Joel Evan, you'll get, I think, like what, 15% off or
15% off. Yeah.
Cool. So we'll do that, and I'll put that in the show notes. Again, Chloe Weber, thank you so much for being on the show. Love you so much. And, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Joel. It's been such an honor and a pleasure.